But many of us refuse that call. And that's the second point. Some will choose not to come. Look again at verses 18 through 20. But they all, with one accord. That means that they all had the same attitude. Each of them responded in the same way, with indifference. None of them responded positively to the king. Instead, they made up excuses. And here, Jesus elaborates on 3 of those excuses. Now, of course, the refusal to attend by those who were invited by the king was a great insult. Imagine the king of the land inviting us, being given the opportunity to be in the presence of royalty, and then snubbing him. Essentially, that's what happened. It was an insult to the king, the host. It was an insult to the king's son, who was the honored guest. And it was even an insult to the king's servants, who were the ones who delivered the invitations. The unique element in this parable is the willful refusal of all of those who were invited. They chose not to come. It was not that they could not come, but that they would not come. Certainly all 3 of these men must have thought that their excuses were pretty valid. Or did they? Let's look at these excuses. The first one said, I've bought a piece of ground. I've bought some land. Now, having just purchased some land is a big deal. It's pretty significant to most people. Perhaps this land was very important to the man in that it would provide a means of income. Maybe it was a farm. Surely this land could wait a few days. It wasn't going anywhere. Was it so important as to use it as an excuse to insult the king? Was this piece of ground, what was it about it? And what is the piece of ground in our lives that's keeping us away from the great celebration? Is there something in our lives that we're using as an excuse to keep us away from God, even to keep us away from His house? Maybe a job or a vacation home or a hobby, a sporting event. Certainly, these things are not as important as our relationship with God. But what about the second excuse? Was it more valid? He said, I've bought 5 yoke of oxen. I've got to go test them. Certainly another possession that was worthy of attention. Maybe for some of us, this could represent a new car or a boat. Maybe even something we need to carry out business like a tractor or a computer. But these things, as important as they may be, are still simply possessions. Stuff. Jesus said in Matthew 6:19-20, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. There's a lot of truth in the statement. You can't take it with you. You can't take it with you. The only thing we can take with us is eternal life. And in eternity, we'll either be with Jesus in a place called heaven, or we'll suffer unspeakable punishment separated from Him in a place called hell. hell. How about the third excuse? The third man said, I've taken a wife, therefore I can't come. What sense does that make? Did she have such a tight leash on him already that he couldn't go see the king and go and be a part of the wedding celebration? Wouldn't she allow him to go? Couldn't she go with him? Well, I don't know, but this man's attitude is a lot like the attitude of many people today. Many people who say things like, well, I can't go to church on Sunday night. I was just there this morning. This is family time. I've worked hard all week. I spent all day Saturday playing golf, fishing, working in the yard. Went to church on Sunday morning. Sunday night, I've got to have some time for myself. Now, at first glance, these all sound like valid reasons for not attending, something of less importance. But when we consider the significance of this event, these all become pretty lame excuses. You and I would be pretty upset if we had prepared for something very extravagant and we started getting the kind of responses this king was getting. What each of these men was expressing to the king by refusing the invitation was a lack of gratitude for what the king had already done for them by preparing the feast. Think about that. Think about what God's already done for us through Jesus.